Book nibbles. Big ideas, small bites. When people think about what drives success in life, they often default to ideas of IQ, talent, hard work, or luck. These factors certainly matter, but as Travis Bradberry and Jean Greaves emphasize in Emotional Intelligence 2.0, there's another, often overlooked force that shapes how far people go, how well they connect with others, and how resilient they are in the face of challenges. Emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence, often shortened to EQ, is the capacity to understand and manage emotions in yourself and others. And it is this skill that distinguishes people who thrive in both personal and professional spheres from those who stumble despite their raw intellect or technical expertise. The book begins with the recognition that in a world where knowledge is increasingly accessible, the ability to navigate human dynamics, regulate emotional impulses, and foster trust is what sets individuals apart. The authors open by grounding emotional intelligence in research that shows its practical weight. Studies involving hundreds of thousands of people across industries and cultures reveal that EQ accounts for a significant portion of performance outcomes, sometimes more than IQ or technical skills combined. In fact, people with high EQ are more likely to succeed in leadership, teamwork, and even personal relationships. One statistic from their research stands out. Emotional intelligence is responsible for nearly 58% of job performance. That means how you handle yourself and others often matters more than what you know. Yet, paradoxically, many people are never taught to develop EQ explicitly. School hammers home math and grammar. Jobs train technical skills. But rarely do institutions coach us on managing emotions under stress, recognizing others' unspoken needs, or communicating in ways that build trust. The book is designed to fill this gap, blending insights with actionable strategies to help readers raise their EQ in practical, daily life. The authors define emotional intelligence through 4 core components: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. These are not abstract concepts, but interlocking skills that influence one another. Self-awareness is the ability to accurately perceive your emotions and stay aware of them as they happen. Self-management is using that awareness to control impulses and direct behavior positively. Social awareness is tuning into the emotions of others, reading the room, and empathizing with what people are feeling. Relationship management builds on the other 3 by allowing you to inspire, influence, and develop others while managing conflict constructively. These 4 domains serve as both a diagnostic framework and a roadmap. The genius of the book is that it doesn't just explain why EQ matters, but give concrete, step-by-step strategies for building it in each area. The storytelling element of the book comes alive through real-world examples. Consider a high-performing employee who consistently missed promotions. Technically brilliant, he could design systems and solve problems better than anyone. But he often alienated colleagues with sharp criticism, dismissed others' ideas, and bristled when challenged. From his perspective, he was simply being honest and efficient. But what he lacked was awareness of how his emotional reactions were perceived by others. His low EQ sabotaged his otherwise stellar credentials. When he learned to pause before reacting, to frame feedback constructively, and to recognize that others' feelings influence their openness to ideas, his career trajectory shifted. This illustrates a central truth. Talent opens doors, but EQ keeps them open. The authors also describe leaders who rose rapidly not because they were the smartest in the room, but because they listened, empathized, and managed their own egos. In one example, a manager handled a company crisis not by barking orders, but by calmly acknowledging the stress everyone felt, thanking the team for their resilience, and guiding them toward solutions. His transparency and emotional steadiness instilled confidence. What could have been a morale-draining disaster became an opportunity for the team to bond. Emotional intelligence doesn't erase challenges, but equips people to handle them with composure and empathy, transforming outcomes. A key theme woven throughout the book is the interplay between brain biology and emotional regulation. Emotions originate in the limbic system, specifically the amygdala, which fires rapidly in response to stimuli, often before the rational prefrontal cortex has fully processed what's happening. This explains why people sometimes lash out or panic before thinking. EQ development involves strengthening the connection between the rational and emotional centers of the brain so that you pause, reflect, and respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. The authors describe this as extending the gap between feeling and acting, a skill that can be practiced until it becomes second nature. For instance, if a colleague criticizes your work in a meeting, your amygdala might trigger defensiveness or embarrassment. A high EQ response would involve recognizing that reaction internally, taking a breath, and then responding with curiosity. Can you share more about what you see as the key issues? That subtle shift not only diffuses tension, but turns the interaction into a constructive exchange. The book emphasizes self-awareness as the foundation. Without it, the other three areas falter. Practical tips include monitoring your emotions through journaling, pausing several times a day to ask, "What am I feeling right now?" and noticing patterns in your emotional triggers. The authors advise people to resist the temptation to label emotions broadly as just good or bad. Instead, be precise. Are you anxious, irritated, impatient, hopeful, relieved, or energized? This granularity sharpens awareness and helps in regulating responses. One example they use is a manager who constantly felt stressed. Upon closer examination, she realized her stress was often actually rooted in feeling underprepared for meetings. By recognizing this, she shifted her preparation habits and reduced her anxiety. The lesson is that naming emotions accurately is the first step in managing them effectively. Self-management builds on this awareness by focusing on choices. It's about what you do once you notice your emotions. The authors share strategies like creating a mental stop sign before reacting, reframing negative self-talk, and practicing gratitude to counterbalance frustration. For instance, one executive found that writing a quick gratitude note each morning helped him start the day with perspective, making him less reactive to workplace annoyances. Another tip is to sleep on major decisions instead of acting in the heat of emotion, allowing rational thought to reassert itself. The book stresses that self-management is not about suppressing emotions, but channeling them productively. Anger, for example, can be a source of energy when directed into solving a problem rather than venting on others. Social awareness shifts the focus outward. Here, empathy and listening become crucial. The authors stress that people often think they are listening when they're really planning their own response. True listening means silencing your internal chatter and tuning fully into the speaker's words, tone, and body language. The book illustrates this with the story of a customer service representative who transformed angry complaints into loyal customers simply by validating their frustration. Instead of rushing to solve the issue, she would say, "I can hear how frustrating this has been for you," and let the customer vent. Only then would she offer solutions. This practice of acknowledgement builds trust and calms heightened emotions. Social awareness also involves noticing the mood of a group, sensing tension or enthusiasm, and adjusting accordingly. Leaders with high social awareness can walk into a room and quickly grasp whether their team is overwhelmed, disengaged, or energized, allowing them to respond appropriately. Relationship management is where all the previous skills converge. It's about guiding interactions in ways that strengthen rather than weaken connections. Conflict resolution is a central theme here. The book describes a situation where two team members were at odds, each convinced the other was undermining them. A manager with high EQ brought them together, validated each perspective, and reframed the conflict as a shared problem to solve. By focusing on common goals and encouraging each to express their needs openly, the manager turned adversaries into collaborators. Another key aspect of relationship management is inspiring others. High EQ leaders know that people don't just follow logic, they follow vision and emotion. By articulating a compelling purpose and showing authentic enthusiasm, leaders galvanize commitment far more effectively than by issuing directives. Throughout the book, Bradberry and Greaves emphasize that EQ is not fixed. Unlike IQ, which tends to plateau, emotional intelligence can be developed at any stage of life. This is empowering because it means anyone willing to practice can improve. The authors provide dozens of strategies, encouraging readers to pick a few at a time and build gradually. They even developed an online assessment that pairs with the book, giving readers a baseline score and tailored strategies for improvement. The emphasis is on consistent practice rather than overnight transformation. Just as physical fitness requires repeated workouts, EQ requires repeated emotional workouts. Pausing before reacting, asking curious questions, noticing body language, reflecting on interactions, and practicing empathy until they become habitual. One important insight is that EQ doesn't mean being endlessly agreeable or suppressing difficult emotions. It's not about being nice. Rather, it's about being effective. Sometimes the high EQ move is to deliver tough feedback, but in a way that preserves dignity. Sometimes it's to set firm boundaries rather than acquiesce. For instance, one manager had to let an employee go. Instead of avoiding the conversation or delivering it coldly, he prepared by acknowledging the employee's contributions, expressing empathy for the difficulty of the situation, and offering concrete support for the transition. The result was a painful conversation handled with humanity, leaving the employee feeling respected despite the outcome. This example underscores that EQ equips people not to avoid conflict, but to navigate it with clarity and compassion. The authors also highlight the costs of low EQ. Leaders who lack it may drive away talent, create toxic cultures, and sabotage their own credibility. One story involved a CEO whose brilliant vision was undermined by his inability to manage anger. He would berate employees in meetings, leaving them demoralized and fearful. Over time, turnover spiked, innovation plummeted, and his company faltered. Despite his intelligence, his lack of emotional control doomed him. This cautionary tale illustrates that ignoring EQ has tangible consequences not just for individuals, but for organizations. Practical strategies fill the book like a toolbox readers can dip into. Some include counting to 10 before responding in anger, practicing the 75-25 rule of listening 75% and talking 25%, observing others' body language to pick up unspoken signals, and scheduling time for reflection. One especially useful technique is asking trusted colleagues for feedback. How do I come across in meetings? Do I interrupt? Do I dismiss ideas? This can be uncomfortable, but provides invaluable insights into blind spots. Another is to consciously notice when you're blaming others for your emotions. For example, instead of saying, "You made me angry," reframe it as, "I felt angry when this happened." This subtle shift reclaims ownership of emotions, making them more manageable. What makes the book engaging is that it doesn't just preach, but constantly grounds advice in relatable situations. The colleague who talks over you, the boss who micromanages, the family member who pushes your buttons, the pressure of deadlines, the anxiety of public speaking. In each case, EQ skills offer a way to shift from reactive to proactive, from destructive to constructive. And because the examples are so grounded in real life, readers can immediately see how to apply the lessons. By the end, the overarching message is clear. Emotional intelligence is not optional. It is a core determinant of success, satisfaction, and resilience. While intellect may help you land a job or design a product, it is EQ that determines whether you can lead a team, maintain healthy relationships, and adapt to change. In a rapidly shifting world where technical skills can become obsolete quickly, EQ endures as a lifelong asset. The book closes with encouragement that while the path to higher EQ requires effort, the rewards, better relationships, stronger leadership, greater well-being, are immense and well worth the practice. Taken as a whole, Emotional Intelligence 2.0 is both a guidebook and a mirror. It challenges readers to look honestly at their patterns, equips them with strategies to grow, and reminds them that the quality of their life is shaped not just by what they know, but by how they manage emotions in themselves and others. The stories resonate because they show real people stumbling and recovering, succeeding not because they were perfect, but because they learned to harness the power of emotional intelligence. For anyone serious about personal growth or professional effectiveness, this book is not just informative, it is transformative. And that's it. Emotional Intelligence 2.0 by Jean Greaves, Travis Bradberry, and Patrick Lencioni. Thanks for listening to Book Nibbles. If you enjoyed this bite-sized book, don't forget to subscribe for more quick, insightful summaries. See you in the next nibble.